tonight.
He was only 24 years old, was just starting what was expected to be a promising career in music. But tonight, it's only what could have been. Los Angeles police are investigating the shooting death of rapper Notorious B.I.G., also known as Biggie Smalls.
Singer Bob Marley, his reggae music known far beyond its roots in Jamaica, died in a Miami hospital today after a long battle against cancer. Bob Marley was 36 years old.
We thought we understood how these black music legends died, because the stories were simple, repeated everywhere, and delivered to us as final truths: a plane falling from the sky, bullets fired in the dark, a body found alone in a locked room, a voice silenced by drugs, pressure, and exhaustion. The world mourned, the headlines moved on, and history closed the book. But behind those official endings are details that refuse to stay buried. Witnesses who changed their statements, medical files that remained sealed decades later, security footage that was never released, phone calls, sightings, and financial moves that appeared after the moment they were declared dead. When black artists become too powerful, too outspoken, or too difficult to control, death can be more convenient than silence. And when fame turns into surveillance, scandal into a weapon, and survival into a threat, disappearing may be the only form of freedom left. Tonight, we follow the cracks in these stories, not to claim certainty, but to ask the question no one wanted asked: did these legends really die, or did they choose to vanish? 10. Otis Redding, singer who vanished to escape the weight of fame. Before the world learned how loudly he could sing about longing and freedom, it learned how suddenly he could be taken away. Otis Redding was born in 1941 in rural Georgia, and when people talk about that now, they usually make it sound poetic, but the truth is harsher. I'm talking about cracked wooden floors that never stopped creaking, church benches polished by generations of tired bodies, and a kind of hunger that doesn't growl. It just sits there, quiet, patient, waiting. Otis learned very early that if his voice failed him, there was nothing underneath to catch the fall. I've listened to those early gospel recordings, and you can hear it. He wasn't singing to sound beautiful. He was singing like someone trying to stay above water. Every note leans forward. Every phrase feels urgent, unfinished, like he's afraid the song might be taken away mid-breath. There's pain in that voice, but it isn't dressed up. No polish, no safety net, just truth, raw and exposed. By his mid-20s, the world had decided he was a king, soul king, a title that sounds flattering until you realize what it costs. The records sold fast, the tours never stopped. City after city blurred together into the same backstage rooms, the same stale air, the same demand to give everything again tonight. I've read interviews where he smiles, jokes, plays along, but off camera. People noticed how tired his eyes looked, how quiet he became once the music stopped. The success was real, no doubt about that. But the pressure was relentless. Fame didn't lift him up. It sat on his chest. He drank not because he was celebrating, but because he needed something to slow his thoughts down after the lights went off. He talked about wanting space, about wanting to disappear for a while, about how the road was eating him alive. By late 1967, Otis sounded like a man stretched too thin, not just exhausted, cornered, and when you look back now, knowing how abruptly his story ended, it's hard not to feel that his life wasn't quietly heading toward tragedy. It was warning us the entire time. By late 1967, those close to Otis noticed a change. The tours never stopped. The expectations kept growing. Alcohol followed him everywhere. Not as celebration, but as survival. He spoke about exhaustion, about feeling owned by the machine that made him famous, about wanting silence more than applause. On December 10, 1967, Otis boarded a small plane in Wisconsin, heading toward another performance, another obligation he could not refuse. The weather was brutal. The aircraft struggled. Official history says the plane crashed into Lake Monona and killed everyone on board. The funeral came quickly. The world froze Otis in tragedy, a voice lost too soon. But among musicians, another story began circulating quietly, and it always starts the same way, with details that were never meant for headlines. On December 10, 1967, the morning in Wisconsin was cold, gray, and unstable. Otis Redding boarded the small Beechcraft aircraft shortly after sunrise, headed toward another performance, another obligation added to a body already running on fumes. According to this whispered version, he didn't board like the others. He was carrying gear no one else had. A life vest strapped beneath his coat, a compact parachute, folded tight, hidden where no one would question it. Witnesses later recalled him looking unusually calm, not withdrawn, not drunk, focused. He shook hands, he sat near the rear of the plane, and when turbulence hit, when the aircraft began to shake violently over Lake Monona, panic spread fast, shouting, loose equipment sliding across the cabin. But Otis didn't freeze. As the plane lost altitude and the engine noise changed, this story says Otis stood up. He moved with urgency, not hesitation. He clipped the vest, pulled the parachute harness tight. In the chaos, no one stopped him. No one understood what they were seeing. Moments before impact, as the aircraft tilted sharply and the lake rushed up through the windows, Otis opened the rear door. Freezing air slammed into the cabin. According to the rumor, he didn't scream, he didn't look back, he jumped. The plane hit the water seconds later. Rescue teams arrived to wreckage and confusion. Bodies were recovered. A death was confirmed. The world mourned, but one detail stayed buried. No witness ever clearly described Otis's final seconds inside the plane. No one saw him seated. No one heard him cry out. And that's where the story refuses to die. Because if Otis was the only one prepared, if he acted while others panicked, then the crash wasn't just an accident. It was a moment, a narrow window, and a decision made in midair that changed everything. In this version, Otis disappears into fog and freezing water, carried far from witnesses, far from certainty. A body is later recovered. A burial follows. Closure is delivered on schedule. Yet one person never appears at the funeral. A woman, a jazz singer known only in private rooms and late-night sessions. Someone Otis trusted deeply. She leaves Georgia before the end of the year. In early 1968 in New Orleans, musicians begin talking about a man who plays blues like someone trying to stay alive. He avoids cameras, he refuses recording deals. His voice is rougher now, lower, scarred by distance. He does not drink. He arrives early and leaves before dawn. When asked his name, he smiles and changes the subject. The reason for the disappearance, according to the theory, is not fear of death. It is fear of continuing to live as a product. Otis Redding. The legend had become unsustainable. Otis Redding, the man, needed a way out. And if that voice still sings in hidden rooms, then sitting on the dock of the bay may not have been a farewell at all, but a man watching the world move on without him. 9. Sam Cooke, civil rights crooner who disappeared to avoid assassination. If the first man vanished to save his soul, the next may have vanished because staying alive had become too dangerous. Sam Cooke was born in 1931 in Mississippi, raised in church, shaped by faith and sharpened by intelligence. He was more than a singer. He was a businessman, a strategist, a man who understood power in a country that rarely allowed black men to hold it. By 1964, Sam Cooke had crossed into dangerous territory. His music reached across racial lines, but his message never softened. He funded black-owned businesses. He challenged segregation openly. He sang about change at a time when change made people nervous. On December 11, 1964, Sam Cooke was shot and killed in a Los Angeles motel. Authorities labeled it justified. The media focused on scandal. The narrative closed quickly. But for many, it never made sense. Witness accounts shifted, timelines felt rushed, and in civil rights circles, a quieter question spread: what if Sam Cooke knew he was being targeted? According to the alternative theory, Sam planned his disappearance carefully. Fake blood, a staged confrontation, confusion designed to work fast and leave no room for correction. When the gun fired, the wrong man fell. Months later, In early 1965, Sam was allegedly seen in Chicago, meeting privately with Muhammad Ali, one of the few people who understood what it meant to be powerful and watched at the same time. No records, no photos. Just a warning passed between two men who knew history was not kind to outspoken black voices. Soon after, Sam disappears again, this time overseas. Africa, no stages, no crowds, no credit in this version. He dedicates himself to quiet work, funding schools, supporting choirs, teaching young singers who will never know his real name. The reason for vanishing is not fear, it is preservation. Sam Cooke's voice had already changed the world once. Staying visible would have ended it forever. And if a change is going to come, still feels unfinished. Maybe that's because the man who wrote it chose not to die for the message, but to protect it by walking away. 8. Bob Marley, reggae king who faked his death to escape the CIA. Some voices don't fade with illness or age. They fade because someone wants them gone. Bob Marley was born in 1945 in Jamaica, raised in poverty, faith, and resistance. By the late 1970s, he was no longer just a musician. He was a symbol. His music crossed borders. His message crossed ideologies. One Love wasn't a slogan. It was a threat to systems built on division. By 1977, Bob was already under pressure. His political influence in Jamaica made him a target. His open support for African liberation movements drew attention far beyond the music industry. Then came the diagnosis, melanoma, discovered under his toenail. The official story says Bob refused full medical treatment because of his Rastafarian beliefs. His health declined. The world was prepared for a slow goodbye. On May 11, 1981, Bob Marley was declared dead. But among activists and musicians close to him, another story quietly survived, one that begins not with illness, but with fear. According to this version, Bob believed he had been targeted by intelligence agencies because of his growing influence in the global South. There were whispers of poisoned objects, a shoe gifted during a tour, a wound that didn't behave like ordinary cancer. In this theory, Bob agreed to disappear rather than become a martyr. A controlled poisoning was used to simulate rapid decline. Hospital records became part of the illusion. The body that was buried satisfied the world's need for closure. In 1982, a year after his death, a rumor surfaced in Ethiopia. A man resembling Bob Marley, thinner, quieter, living under a different name, was seen meeting privately with Peter Tosh. No photos, no witnesses willing to speak publicly. Just overlapping travel records and familiar stories told by locals. In this version, Bob did not retire from the struggle. He changed its shape. He lived in isolation, funding anti-apartheid movements, supporting African communities, and writing songs that would never be released under his name. Redemption song, some say, wasn't a farewell to life. It was a coded goodbye to fame. The reason for the disappearance was not fear of death. It was fear of being silenced permanently. Bob Marley, the icon, could be killed. Bob Marley, the ghost, could not. His music still feels alive, still urgent, still unfinished. Maybe that's because the man who sang about freedom chose not to die for it, but to protect it by vanishing. And if one legend may have vanished to escape politics and surveillance, the next disappearance feels even closer, even quieter, and far more personal, so stay with us. Subscribe to the channel. Because what comes next shocked an entire generation. 7. Aaliyah, R&B princess who disappeared to hide a pregnancy scandal. Some deaths feel sudden, others feel arranged, as if the ending arrived too perfectly. Aaliyah was born in 1979 in New York, raised in talent, discipline, and industry pressure. By her teens, she was already a star. By her early 20s, she was a global icon. But behind the smooth vocals and polished image was a young woman surrounded by men making decisions for her. Her early career was marked by controversy. The relationship with R. Kelly was buried, denied, rewritten. Her image was carefully repaired. By 2001, Aaliyah was rebuilding, stronger, more independent, and quietly preparing for a new phase of her life. On August 25, 2001, she boarded a small plane in the Bahamas after filming a music video. The plane crashed shortly after takeoff. No survivors. The story was immediate, tragic, final. But from the beginning, the details felt wrong. The aircraft was overloaded. She was reportedly hesitant to board. Witnesses gave conflicting accounts of her final moments. And then there were the rumors no one wanted to touch. According to the alternative narrative, Aaliyah never boarded the plane. Instead, she switched places during the chaos at the airstrip. A trained skydiver, hired quietly, took her seat. Minutes later, the crash sealed the story forever. In this version, Aaliyah was extracted midair using a coordinated jump before impact, disappearing into the sea and resurfacing miles away, where a private vessel waited. The world saw death, she saw escape. The reason, according to the theory, was a pregnancy that threatened everything. A child with Damon Dash, rumors spreading, contracts at risk, and an industry unwilling to let its princess grow beyond control. Disappearing was the only way to protect herself and the child. In 2002, whispers emerged in the Bahamas of a young woman working quietly in music production. She avoided cameras. She refused interviews. Some producers claimed her ear for sound was uncanny. Her voice, they said, was unmistakable. She was allegedly seen meeting privately with Timbaland, who never confirmed or denied the rumors. In this telling, Aaliyah didn't abandon music. She stepped behind it, writing, producing, guiding other voices while protecting her own. The industry mourned a princess lost too soon, but if this story holds even a fragment of truth, then Aaliyah didn't die. She escaped an ending written for her. And if 1 in a million ever feels like it's still echoing, maybe it's because she's still out there creating quietly, far from the spotlight that almost destroyed her. 6. The notorious big rap giant who faked his death to escape the beef. You probably remember the night this giant fell, because no one forgets the moment hip-hop realized fame could get you killed faster than poverty. The notorious Big was born in 1972 in Brooklyn, into a world where danger felt normal and survival was learned early. He was never built like a hero. He was heavy, slow, observant, and painfully honest. His voice did not shout slogans. It confessed. When Ready to Die arrived in 1994, it sounded less like an album and more like a man rehearsing his own ending. Biggie spoke about death the way others spoke about tomorrow. As the East Coast-West Coast feud intensified, Biggie became trapped inside a war he did not fully control. Threats followed him from city to city. Rumors grew darker. Money from questionable sources circled his orbit. By late 1996, people close to him noticed his paranoia. He checked exits. He avoided windows. He spoke quietly about wanting out, not of music, but of the battlefield that music had become. On March 9, 1997, gunfire cut through a Los Angeles street. Biggie was declared dead inside his SUV. The city froze. The case went cold almost immediately. No arrests, no closure, just a body, a funeral, and a profitable legacy. But in another version of events, the shooting was not an ending. It was a cover, according to this theory. The scene was staged with the help of Sean Combs, who understood the economics of survival. Biggie alive meant risk. Biggie dead meant silence. A substitute body, rushed reports, and controlled chaos sealed the illusion before questions could form. Months later, whispers surfaced in Mexico. A large man, moving slowly, speaking little, living under a different name. He was allegedly seen meeting privately with Faith Evans, the only person Biggie ever trusted without armor. No cameras, no proof, just intersecting travel records and stories told in confidence. In this telling, Biggie never stopped writing. He stopped being visible. His words leaked through other voices, shaping lyrics that felt older, darker, wiser. The beef didn't end. He simply stepped out of its line of fire. And if Hypnotized still feels like more than entertainment, Maybe that's because the greatest trick Biggie ever pulled was convincing the world he never walked away. 5. Tupac Shakur, revolutionary rapper who faked his death to escape the mafia. People remember Tupac because he never sounded safe, and no one who watched him burn that bright expected him to survive. Tupac Shakur was born in 1971 in New York, raised by revolution, surveillance, and unfinished wars. His mother taught him resistance before rhythm, ideology before industry. Tupac did not enter hip-hop to entertain. He entered to confront. Every interview felt like a warning. Every album felt like a countdown. By 1996, Tupac was surrounded. Legal trouble, street politics, death row records tightening like a trap. All eyes on me was not confidence. It was a statement of awareness. He spoke openly about death, betrayal, and disappearing. He said it too often for coincidence. On September 13, 1996, after a shooting in Las Vegas, Tupac was declared dead. Vigils followed. Murals appeared overnight. The world accepted the loss with a strange sense of inevitability. But the alternative story begins at the hospital. In this version, the shooting was real, but not fatal. Medical records were sealed. Transfers happened quietly. A narrow window opened, and Tupac took it, with help from political allies and underground networks. He vanished before the system could finish him. In 1997, rumors surfaced of a reunion in Cuba between Tupac and his mother. Afeni Shakur, Cuba, a place that had sheltered revolutionaries before, became the perfect silence. Some versions of the story even whisper about discreet assistance from Fidel Castro, who understood symbolism when he saw it. In exile, Tupac shed the performance. He studied history. He wrote without beats. He planned without cameras. The reason for disappearing was not fear, but clarity. The mafia surrounding death row had turned music into a death sentence. Survival required absence. And if changes still feels unresolved, maybe it's because Tupac never finished speaking. He simply changed where he was speaking from. 4. Prince Purple Genius, who faked his death to break the contract. Prince was born in 1958 in Minnesota, a prodigy obsessed with control, sound, and autonomy. He wrote everything, played everything, yet for decades, he owned almost nothing. Prince fought record labels publicly, calling contracts slavery and refusing to surrender his identity. By the mid-2010s, Prince was exhausted. Chronic pain haunted him. Legal battles drained him. He spoke openly about wanting freedom, not applause. On April 21, 2016, he was found dead from an overdose. Paisley Park turned into a shrine overnight. But doubts followed immediately. According to the alternative narrative, Prince staged his death using synthetic medication designed to mimic overdose symptoms. Medical timelines moved too fast. Information was sealed too cleanly. The story locked before questions could grow. In 2017, rumors spread of a private return to Paisley Park, a thinner man, disguised, moving through rooms he once owned. There, he was allegedly reunited with Sheila E., one of the few people who understood both his genius and his exhaustion. Staff signed NDAs. Silence followed. In this version, Prince escaped ownership forever. No contracts, no deadlines, no identity to exploit. He continued making experimental music, releasing nothing, influencing everything. The reason for disappearing was not death. It was liberation. And if Sign of the Times still feels prophetic, maybe it's because Prince didn't vanish from culture. He simply stepped outside its control. 3. Marvin Gaye, the soul prince who might have slipped away. You still feel the chill when you think about this one, because some endings feel less like fate and more like a closed door slammed too quickly. Marvin Gaye entered the world in 1939 in Washington, D.C., inside a household ruled by discipline, fear, and scripture. His childhood was shaped by contradiction. Music meant salvation, yet home meant tension. That fracture lived inside him forever. His voice sounded smooth, intimate, almost comforting, but beneath it ran anxiety, doubt, and longing. when What's Going On reached the airwaves, it wasn't crafted as protest for attention. It was a man quietly begging the world to explain itself. Fame didn't stabilize him. It magnified every weakness by the early 1980s. Marvin was unraveling. Cocaine sharpened his paranoia. Debt pressed in from every direction. Lawsuits, broken relationships, and whispers of sexual scandal followed him relentlessly. He withdrew. Stopped trusting people. Stopped trusting himself. Moving back into his parents' house in Los Angeles felt less like returning home and more like entering a pressure cooker. On April 1st, 1984, that pressure detonated. A domestic argument escalated rapidly. Voices rose, bodies moved, a gun appeared, shots rang out. Marvin Gaye collapsed. The report was swift. The story was brutal. The verdict was final. A genius dead at 44, one day before his birthday. But what if finality was exactly what everyone needed? If Marvin believed addiction and scandal would consume him completely, disappearance could have felt like mercy. The chaos of that day provided perfect cover. A father already drowning in guilt, police rushing to restore order, media eager for a tragic headline, music executives ready to close the chapter. If Marvin vanished at that moment, the world would never look twice. What followed, according to scattered whispers, was exile. In 1985, stories circulated of a solitary black man in Paris cafes, withdrawn, observant, always listening. He avoided attention, yet asked careful questions about injustice, poverty, and unrest back home. He never spoke of records, never spoke of Motown. Then, one evening, a familiar figure reportedly joined him quietly. Diana Ross. No embrace, no cameras, just recognition. If Marvin lived beyond that point, it wouldn't have been as a star. It would have been as a writer, an observer, someone feeding protest music into the world without attaching his name. In that light, What's Going On never ended. It became a whisper instead of a cry. 2. Whitney Houston, the diva who may have chosen silence over destruction. This one lingers because it unfolded in front of everyone, yet still feels strangely unfinished. Whitney Houston was born in 1963 in New Jersey with a voice that felt untouchable. Effortless, precise, commanding. She didn't need theatrics. Her sound alone could fill arenas and stop conversations. But perfection is expensive. Every performance raised the standard. Every misstep invited punishment. Over time, the expectations became unbearable. Behind the image, Whitney's life was collapsing. Addiction tightened its grip. Her marriage became public spectacle. Every relapse turned into a headline. She wasn't just losing control of her body, she was losing ownership of her story. By the end, it felt as if the world was waiting for her to fail. On February 11, 2012, Whitney Houston was found motionless in a bathtub at the Beverly Hilton. The explanation arrived quickly. Accidental drowning, drugs involved, a tragic but expected conclusion. The timing, just before a major industry event, sealed the narrative. But what if the narrative was already written long before that night? If Whitney had reached a point where survival meant escape, disappearing would require a moment the world was ready to believe. A hotel room, a locked door, a history of addiction. Everything lined up too cleanly. If someone inside the industry helped her step away while attention focused elsewhere, no one would question it. If she lived on, fame would no longer be an option, only anonymity. In 2013, quiet rumors spread through the Bahamas of a woman singing gospel in a small church. No promotion, no recordings, just a voice that sounded worn, cracked, but unmistakably powerful. People said it didn't perform, it healed. There were also whispers of a young woman arriving one afternoon, hesitant, trembling. Bobby Christina. If that meeting happened, it wouldn't have been dramatic. It would have been survival meeting survival. If Whitney chose to vanish, then her story didn't end in water and silence, it ended in withdrawal. And the phrase crack is wax stops feeling like branding and starts feeling like regret spoken too late. 1. Michael Jackson, the king of pop who may have escaped the world entirely. Now is the one people still argue about, because no disappearance has ever felt so public and yet so unresolved. Michael Jackson was born in 1958 in Indiana and shaped into a performer before he understood choice. Stardom arrived early and never loosened its grip. By the time Thriller transformed him into a global phenomenon, Michael was already retreating inward. His body changed, his habits hardened, his trust eroded. Years of accusations, trials, and relentless media scrutiny followed, even after being cleared in court. He lived as if constantly hunted: masks, security, isolation. Fame became confinement. On June 25, 2009, Michael Jackson was declared dead after an overdose. The news detonated worldwide. Grief unfolded in real time. Memorials multiplied. The story felt complete. But what if it was the final performance? After 2005, Michael spent long periods outside the United States, including time in the Middle East. He spoke openly about wanting privacy and peace. If anyone understood how to vanish inside chaos, it was him. If the world believed he was fragile, dependent, and close to collapse, that belief could be used. If June 2009 was the exit, it was flawless. Confusion, medical panic, a public tragedy too overwhelming to question, while attention focused on mourning. Someone else could move quietly in the opposite direction. In 2010, rumors surfaced of sightings in Bahrain: a thin man, covered face, heavy security, someone avoiding attention with precision, and according to persistent whispers. There was one private reunion, Elizabeth Taylor, not for nostalgia, for confirmation. If Michael survived, returning to performance would have been impossible instead. Anonymity would offer something fame never did control. Some believe he turned toward quiet philanthropy, especially causes protecting children, operating through layers of distance. And if Man in the Mirror still feels unresolved, maybe it's because the man who sang it finally stepped away, leaving the reflection behind for the world to confront on its own. So now the question is no longer how they died, it's whether they truly died at all. When you look back at these stories, the patterns are hard to ignore. Deaths that happened at the peak of pressure, at the center of scandal, surrounded by money, contracts, enemies, and systems that benefited the moment the music stopped. Some endings feel too clean, some timelines close too fast, and some voices feel too alive to have simply vanished. What if a few of these deaths were not accidents, not tragedies, but carefully constructed exits? What if disappearing was safer than staying visible, and what if one or more of these legends chose silence over destruction? We're not here to claim the truth. We're here to ask the question most people are afraid to ask. So now it's your turn, Dot. Do you believe some of these artists faked their deaths? Do you think any of them could still be alive, watching the world from a distance? Or do you believe every story ended exactly the way we were told? Leave your thoughts in the comments. Read what others see that you might have missed, Dot. And if you want to keep exploring the darkest corners of music history, untold stories and hidden endings, subscribe to the channel. Because some legends don't die, they disappear.